Live for a second because yes. So namaste, everybody. Welcome back to our session. And this is a session which will focus on Hindu genocides. The genocides of Abrahamic faiths are largely recorded. Dr. Sharma, who went to the UN recently as a delegate, also pointed that out, that a lot of the genocides that happen of communities like the Hindu community, the community, some of the Buddhist have not been recognized, by in a formal process. So Arti ji, I want to introduce Arti ji, who's going to be the moderator and chair for this session. Welcome, Arti ji. And Arti ji has been doing so much work on this in this field. She saw that there is no recognition of Hindu genocides, and she took it upon herself to do meticulous research. She's a researcher herself, and she brought that skill to this whole process and created a website called hindugenocide.com, and it records over many years the genocides that have happened. We being the longest living civilization, one of the longest living civilization, continuous traditions in the world, we have seen that the fight that was given, as well as the lives that were laid in the process of keeping this civilizational entity alive and not relegated to the museums. So here we are, Arti ji, the floor is yours, the chair is yours. And I know we have three panelists. I will let you introduce them. Dr. Richard Beckham, I'm so glad to make acquaintance with you again.
It's my pleasure.
We'll talk later in the next session. I'll see you.
Namaste, everyone. My name is Arti Agarwal, and I'm so excited to have this panel discussion with my fellow panelists. So thank you, Richard ji, for that introduction. And I would love to introduce some of our panelists who will be joining me today and bringing in their expertise to weigh in on specific areas. So first of all, I want to introduce Dr. Richard Beckham. If you've not read his book, I would suggest you read it, first of all, because I went out of my way to secure a copy of his book in India. So Dr. Richard Benkin is an American human rights activist, a journalist, writer, and lecturer. He has been a member of Folks magazine's editorial board since August 2011. He burst into human rights scene in 2003 with a one-man campaign that freed a Bangladeshi journalist who was imprisoned and tortured for opposing radical Islam's rise in that country and encouraging relations with Israel. Since 2008, he has fought to stop the ethnic cleansing of Bangladesh's Hindus. He has published books such as The Battle Beneath Jerusalem, A Quiet Case of Ethnic Cleansing, a monograph on Bangladeshi Hindus published in Toronto and Mumbai, and Sociology, A Way of Seeing Wordsworth's Love and Company. So welcome so much, Dr. Richard Beckham. It's really nice to have you here. Next, we also have Dr. Omendra Ratnu with us. So Omiji, as we like to call him, he has been a long-time activist who has been fighting for the rights of Pakistani Hindus, and he has been trying to secure their place in the world order. He runs a foundation called Rehabilitating, through which they rehabilitate Pakistani Hindu refugees in India. So welcome, Dr. Omendra Ratnu. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So, and we also have a very special guest, Shakella ji. She will be joining us in a few minutes. So I will just directly read what she has to say about herself. So she says this is just an excerpt which I found. My family came to the US as refugees in 1984. I come from a long line of military family. The Mujaddid family lost many members. I grew up in the US and after college volunteered for many different women's rights groups. So this issue is very close to my heart. Most of my family members are involved in politics, but I always thought it being heavily influenced by greed. Therefore, I kept my distance. However, my passion about this subject has forced me to speak now. So A very warm welcome to Shakella ji. I think, is she there now? I think she'll be just joining in for a few minutes, but this is just for the reference of our audience who are tuning in. So I just want to first start with, introducing the Hindu genocide and, what exactly are we talking about and why are we even talking about the human rights of Hindus here? So the biggest question which came to my mind, when I saw this conference come up about dismantling global Hindutva, was that they had endorsement from genocide researchers, and they have professed that Hindus are extremists, Hindus are violent people, all of that. But the most worrying aspect was that a huge team of genocide researchers came together to condemn Hindus, but none of these researchers have actually documented the genocide of Hindus and Hindus all over the world, not just in India or in US. So from that perspective, I want to actually talk about the Hindu genocide, which me and my team of researchers have been documenting for 3 years. And it is a very, very big project, as you can always imagine. We are documenting Hindu genocide from the beginning of time, means for the last 1300 to 1500 years. So we have already put out a timeline of atrocities for the last 300 years. And just today we published the database of 2020. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a preview based on the 2020 data. Now, this is not the historic genocide. I'm just going to share the 2020 data now. So I'm just going to start sharing my slides. Please let me know if you can see my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of the data and why this should be classified as a genocide. So this is the definition of the word genocide based on the Nuremberg Charter and the Genocide Convention. It's a systematic destruction of a people, either to cripple them permanently or to destroy them completely. And the individuals are selected specifically because of their identity. So when you try to wipe out the identity of a certain people, or you try to target them because of their identity, it does constitute a genocide. Now, where is this genocide happening the most? The genocide of Hindus, and I'm talking about now. So this 2020 is not that far away. So this is a distribution of the documented crimes. Now, I want to emphasize that this data is based only on the reported crimes from these countries. The actual crimes may be much higher. These are the reported number of crimes. As you can see, India is, of course, making up a big part of it, but there is Pakistan with more than 1,000 incidents in the previous year, and then there is Bangladesh with more than 1,100 incidents. And although Afghanistan is showing us 229, we are extremely constrained with Afghanistan because there are hardly any reports from Afghanistan. So even this 229 is a conservative number. This is the spatial distribution. You can see which countries have had Hindus attacked all over the world. So again, you can see it is South Asia, in fact, which is the most affected in terms of targeting of Hindus and committing hate crimes against Hindus. This is just a very quick overview of which states in India face the maximum number of crimes against Hindus. So as you can see, some of the states are the most ignored, and they have the highest number of crimes against Hindus. This is illegal religious conversion of Hindus, especially by evangelical organizations. And as you can see, the two Hindu majority countries of India and Nepal, they have faced more than 1 million. This is more than 1 million number of conversions in just 1 year, just 1 year. And again, I want to put this on record. These are illegal conversions. They're not legal. It's illegal in both of these countries. Now, this is the attacks on Hindu and Sikh temples in the year 2020. Again, these are only documented reports, because there are many small. India is dotted with temples all over the country, so it's impossible to track all of them. Every nook and cranny has a temple in many states of India. But these are still what we could find in the media reports. And this is for the South Asia, what is traditionally called South Asia, which is India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh. Since we are talking about Afghanistan also today, I wanted to put this figure also on the screen in a very bold way, which is that 99% of Hindus and Sikhs of Afghanistan have actually already left the country in the last 3 decades. And this is reported by an Afghanistan media house. This was a report from 2016. Now, in the year 2020, only about 500 of them were estimated to be remaining in Afghanistan. And in the recent news reports after the overtake of Taliban, we know that only a single Hindu temple remains in Afghanistan. All other Hindu temples have been attacked. There was a terrorist attack on a Sikh Gurudwara in Afghanistan last year, which killed, I think, more than 20 people. So all of these incidents have just not gathered as much steam or as much media coverage as they should. This is the total final figure of the number of lives affected for the year 2020. Although we say lives affected, we mean people who have directly borne the brunt of these crimes in these countries. But as far as lives affected goes, this is not exactly a very indicative figure, because even if one person dies, even if one person is raped, their whole family suffers, and sometimes they suffer for generations. So it's not that you can so easily say that this is the only impact of that crime. That crime changes the lives of many people, but still, from a conservative point of view, you can see the number of people who face these crimes directly. So, which brings us to the final question that, why is there so much silence on the violation of Hindu human rights and the Hindu genocide? So, that is the point I wanted to highlight in this panel discussion, that Hindus have faced all types of discrimination, all types of targeting, and all types of hate crimes simply for being a Hindu. And problems like Hindu phobia are being swept under the carpet and said that, oh, there's a certain denial of the word Hindu phobia, of the phenomenon of Hindu phobia. And what this type of a denial leads to is these type of hate crimes, because hate crimes require you to first systematically hate a certain group of people. So as long as you're instilling hate into people against a certain group, you cannot say that this is just this type of a crime. No, you can see a systematic pattern in all of these crimes, where it's almost like it's the same script. So many of these incidents, especially in Bangladesh and Pakistan, it's almost like the same script getting repeated in different localities, in different districts. The whole village is burnt down. All Hindus are left without homes, without any property, any money. And in Pakistan, a 13-year-old, 15-year-old girl will be abducted, she will be raped or gang raped, and then she will be married off to a 50-year-old man. And then she will be given a marriage certificate by some Maulvi with her age written as 21. So this is like a script getting repeated over and over and over again. And even though the script is so much out there, there is no conversation around it in the mainstream media. There is no conversation, there is no research in this from so many of these genocide research scholars. In Bangladesh, as long as they have the blasphemy laws, the fact that they are a secular country does not really matter much, because they can still frame people for blasphemy laws. So there was an incident that a person and his entire family were targeted, their family homes were burned, their entire Hindu village was burnt, and they were incarcerated. So they were framed and they were arrested just for a Facebook post, just not even for a post, actually, just for a comment on a Charlie Hebdo post. So this kind of blasphemy laws actually constitute lawfare, where the law is used against the people which it is supposed to be protecting. The law is supposed to protect people. But in countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, and now Afghanistan, of course, the law itself is used to persecute people. So this kind of a lawfare is actually the traditional, it has been the tool of the genocide for many, many years. Anybody who has studied the patterns of genocide in history will know that, they have these laws, or they find gray areas in these laws which are used to persecute people. So from here, I want to ask now our panelists to weigh in. First of all, I'll ask Dr. Richard Beckham, who has done so much research on the persecution of Bangladeshi Hindus, and he has written a book on the ethnic cleansing of Bangladeshi Hindus. He has spent a lot of time in talking to these people. So, Dr. Benkin, I want you to just give us an idea of what you found in your research, and what do you think of the present state of Bangladeshi Hindus?
A few things. First of all, RTG, I understand why you called Bangladesh a secular country. It's written in their constitution, but it is anything but a secular country. It has an official state religion, and I think we all know which religion that is, and it's not Hinduism.
Right.
There are funding implications of that. The rule of law is not applied to Hindus, sometimes applied to Christians. Never applied to indigenous people, but it certainly is anything but a secular. I understand why you said so, because again, it is considered one of their core principles. But again, and that I think is the first thing we got to do is understand that there's a huge difference between what Bangladesh says and what Bangladesh does.
Right.
Even this all started in Bangladesh. This all started immediately after the revolution in 1971, when under Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the parliament was reviewing all the Pakistani laws which had previously applied to Bangladesh when it was East Pakistan, and we're going to decide what to keep. Okay, and just an example. They took the Vested Property Act, and for anyone who doesn't know what that is, that is basically a law that says that essentially it said that Hindu land can be taken on the premise that the individual has vacated the land, and it's now something the state should take. And of course, what happens is they're forcibly evicted, and then the state. But in any event.
Right.
So they looked at the laws of Pakistan as it applied to then East Pakistan and decided what to carry over. And they looked at the Vested Property Act, which Pakistan had called the Enemy Property Act, and they took it in whole cloth. So in other words, even back in the days when Bangladesh was supposed to be a democratic state, a secular state, you see the beginnings, and it never stopped. For those who aren't familiar with the figures, when Pakistan had its first census in 1951, the population of East Pakistan, Bangladesh, amounted to almost a third of the population. 20 years later, now 20 years may sound in some contexts like a long time, but it's really not very long. Remember, today is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. In some ways it seems long, but in other ways it seems like it just happened. But so in 1951, they were almost a third. Hindus were almost a third. By 1971, they were down to less than a fifth. Now, only 30 years later, and again, remember, these times, there's not a great deal of time, especially when you consider how old Hinduism is and how long it's been around. 30 years later, they went from a third to about 9%, less than 1 out of 10. And today, even though it's very difficult to get accurate statistics, and you can understand why the Bangladeshi government tries to massage them and play with them a lot, I instead go to people on the ground, and there's pretty strong consensus that now they've gone from 1/3 to 1/5 to 1/10 to probably about 1 in 15. Now, even if we didn't know that the Hindus of Bangladesh faced atrocities every single day during that period, we would have to ask what happened to that population. But, and this goes back, RTG, to something you asked initially, but no one seems to be asking, or very few people seem to be asking that. And I'll mention something very quickly, and I'll let the other the other speakers. One, I think there is a problem in the West in that Hinduism is really not something that, I mean, yeah, there are really not that many Hindus in the West. We're starting to get more now, but it's not a, it's not, it doesn't have the impact. Plus, the West is solidly understand religion as Abrahamic religion. And as a Jew, by the way, they don't include the original Abrahamic religion. It's the ones that came after us. But in other words, like as I like to say, people don't think it's religion if you're not worshiping God with a big G. And obviously, Hinduism is far more complex and rich and fascinating than that.
Of course.
That's one thing. But the other thing, and I have to say this, I have been, again, I know you said I've done research, but what I like to think more than research is I've been on the ground fighting these atrocities against Hindus, and we've had some successes. And I've even had some successes in bringing it to certain people in Washington. Whereas now, by the way, at least it's acknowledged. At least it's acknowledged that Hindus are being oppressed in Bangladesh. But what has confounded me for this entire time has been the silence and inaction of India. I understand what reasons, but we're talking about people being killed. We're talking about women being gang raped. We're talking about children being abducted. We're talking about such horrendous things, whether it's the United States or India. And I like to think those are two good countries. I don't understand the silence. And again, particularly from India. And I'm going to give you one example of just how extensive this is. In 2009, I sat down for a rather extended time with the BJP's candidate for, he would be prime minister if the BJP won in 2009. And that, of course, is Advaniji. And we talked about this issue. And when we finished, he said to me, well, if this is happening to Hindus right next door in Bangladesh, the people have to know about this. And I'll give you two of them. But first, he didn't say a damn word after that. So I don't know how he thought the people would find out. Then the second thing is how many people already knew what was going on in Bangladesh. It wasn't necessarily acknowledged, documented in the way that it has been since, but people knew about that. And that inaction and silence from India, and from the Hindu community in general, I'd say, has confounded me at times. However, that doesn't stop me from saying it's my responsibility to do whatever I have to do to fight that. I'll give you one other example. Certainly, I do not expect the oppressed Hindus of Bangladesh to rise up and all of a sudden be able to do what they haven't been able to do for decades. That's that's not something I want to put on them, because their options are quite limited. I want to give you an example. It's a message for Hindus elsewhere. Exactly. If any of you have been to the United States and were in the United States during the 1970s and 1980s, you know that you could not drive past a Jewish synagogue without seeing a big banner that said, "Save Soviet Jewry." You see, our people were being oppressed in the Soviet Union. And the American Jewish community knew that they couldn't help themselves. And we felt we had to. We had to have that obligation. We had that obligation. We had to do it. So we really mobilized as a community because, pretty strong as a community. And, we would send people who you'd see at the water cooler at work or at the supermarket would go to the Soviet Union bringing religious objects for the Jews there that they were deprived of it. They would risk their lives doing these things. And in the end, In the end, we got 1.2 million Jews out of the Soviet Union. Now, remember, there are only about 18 million Jews, in the world, depending on how you calculate it. And that's today. So, but the point is, we felt as a community that had some freedoms, it was our obligation to help our co-religionists. And in fact, I can tell you that every time President Reagan sat down with Mikhail Gorbachev, he began the conversation by asking about this issue. And I can also tell you it was one of the reasons, before Reagan, one of the reasons why the United States boycotted the Soviet Olympics in 1980. So my challenge, my question, where I'd like to see this go is, so what are we going to actually do about this? What are we going to do to change things? I've mentioned two tracks. One is in South Asia, what can be done there, and the other is in the United States. By the way, by the United States, I mean the West, but I really don't think there's a whole lot you can expect from the EU. I think the United States is where we need to focus. So that is my challenge, because after all, coming to a seminar and talking does nothing to help those victims in Bangladesh. We might be able to say, oh, aren't we good? But it does nothing to help the victims. What does matter is what we do about this. So
Yes.
that's my challenge. That's my challenge today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Benkin, for that viewpoint. And I think we may not be able to do much by talking here, but I think what we can do is we can get the Hindu Americans and the Hindus in India to take up these matters to their respective congressmen, to their respective, senators, to their respective MPs and MLAs in India. And we need to have recognition for these crimes against Hindus in Bangladesh and for them to intervene.
I did not want to minimize the importance of seminars like this, because they are important. I think one of the things that distinguishes us from our enemies is we have facts on our side and they don't.
Course.
But what I will add, and I usually save this till the end of when I go and talk to people in South Asia, in particular, to Hindu groups here, to Jewish groups here, I will ask everyone, all the participants, all 99 participants on here, to think about this. When you leave this, when you're done with this seminar, what are you going to do about the persecuted Hindus? Not what I'm going to do, or what Arti G or Richard G is going to do, not what Narendra Modi is going to do, or not what the West is going to do. I want to know, what are you going to do to stop the persecution? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Benkin. That is extremely powerful. And I think, and I hope all the 99 participants actually take a learning from what you said. So now I'll just go to Dr. Omendra Ratnu. Thank you so much, Omiji, for being here. I hope you can hear me and see me. I think you're muted. Oh, I think Omendra Ji is muted.
Yeah, I'm okay now. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. So, Omiji, we want to hear from you. What are the challenges you face when you are rehabilitating Pakistani Hindu refugees? And, just a little bit about your work. For the last so many years, you have been working in this direction. And what do you think is the way forward?
Too many questions. I mean, one question will take me half an hour to answer, but I'll respond.
Please bear with my questions.
Yes. I'll restrict to what we have achieved and the way forward. The issues are pretty much obvious now. Every day we are getting one video of a Hindu girl child, a Sikh girl child being picked up from her homes, her wailing parents, and the whole tamasha going on. The whole thing gets repeated. There's no FIR. The court judges say that no, Islam mein aane ka rasta hai, jaane ka rasta nahi hai, and all that kind of stuff. So it's too repetitive for me to narrate here. What we have been able to achieve at Rehabilitating in the past 7 years is that we have taken out 10,000 Hindus out of Pakistan, and we have helped about 500 Sikhs escape that hellish land for Hindus and Sikhs. We have managed about 3,500 citizenships under the old laws only. The CAA, mind you, has not yet been activated. We provide free medical care to every Pakistani Hindu who comes to us. We try to give them a footing in the country. We try to give them a sense of belonging. We are not that big people that we could absorb them, professionally. We could give them jobs, or we have any ecosystem to absorb them. Usually we refer them to their castes. 80% of these Hindus are Dalit Sahodaras. They are absolutely disempowered people, Meghwals, Bhils, Koli, Balais, Old Rajputs. They're all scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in Bharat. But a lot has been done after 2014 when Modi ji became the Prime Minister, when Rajnath Singh ji was the Home Minister. He was very kind. He used to give us an audience on a notice of 1 day, and he would never make us wait. He understood the value of our time, unlike modern day politicians. So in August 2016, he gave up this notification where he gave the power of citizenship to the local district collectors. So all hat off to this government, and especially my gratitude goes out to Rajnath Singh ji, who has been very kind and was very, very perceptive leader, a very intelligent leader. He would understand the issue in 3 minutes, and he would issue the relevant order, which now I find quite lacking in the MHA. We are still dragging their feet. We have been asking for an audience to increase the number of visas for Pakistani Hindus from 2,000 to 10,000. We have about 1 crore Hindus in Pakistan, 1 crore Hindus, and they are being, done away with systematically. So we need to speed up the rate of their extrication out of Pakistan. But the challenge is, I mean, what do you do when your leadership says that we all have the same DNA? What do you do with that? If what Dr. Benkin has been saying, that the Hindus are happening, what to Hindus in Bangladesh? When I see 3 Hindu girls being picked every single day, I mean, what should I do with their DNA? How are Britishers responsible for this
anymore?
Yeah, Britishers. How are Britishers responsible for the Hindu-Muslim conflict? Instead, the Hindu leadership should shout at the top of its lungs from the Red Fort that stop this persecution of Hindus for being Hindus. This is the debauchery that is going on right under our noses in 21st century. For Shiva's sake, this is not 12th century or 8th century when people can be in darkness. We all know what's going on. We just don't have a voice. Of late, when Joe Biden opened the borders, I and Richard have been working our brains off, but it's something just beyond my pay scale. I just don't know how to do it. We do not even have a refugee status for Hindus of Pakistan in the United States. We have that for the Syrians, but we don't have a refugee status in the United Nations to be taken, where Hindus can be taken out of the system. And our leadership here is busy saying that we have the same DNA. I really don't know what to do with this kind of leadership. The average Hindu doesn't know anything. The dharmacharyas, the mathadhishas are busy. I don't know what they're busy with. I can offend some sensibilities, so I'll rather keep quiet about this. But I don't see anybody speaking the truth of Abrahamic faiths, which are butchering us day and night. None of them speaks. None of them speaks the truth of the mafia, which is killing our daughters. So, मैं आज जद में हूं तो खुश गुमान न हो, चिराग सबके बुझेंगे हवा किसी की नहीं. If today a Dalit girl has been picked up in interior Sindh, the day is not far when our daughters will be picked up. All of us are in the line of fire. We are witnessing in the 21st century when music is banned and we have jokers of the Western media and the Indian media saying that this is a very improved version of Taliban. So good luck to this world with this improved version of Taliban, which bans music. I mean, you have to be really sick in your mind. I mean, sickness also gets a little perturbed here. This is something more than sick. A society wants to ban music. What kind of people do that? and we are ready to do business with them. So good luck to this world. As far as the solutions, this is the solution that you and I are doing right now, Arti, that the Richa has been so laboriously working on. We Hindus have to get together, the middle class, especially our leadership has forsaken us, except for Shri Narendra Modi and except for Yogi Adityanath ji and a couple other more. I see no Hindu voice in the so-called Hindu leadership. So it's up to the middle class now. It's up to people like me. It's up to people like you. It's people like Sanjay Dikshit, Pushpendra Kulshesh to raise the voice, to educate the fellow Hindus. And I'm so glad to report that education is happening. Fellow Hindus are rising. We are taking the fight to them. The last thing that I want to mention here is that we need paid Hindus to work 24/7 if you want to save Hinduism. If you give peanuts, you will get monkeys, which we have right now. Monkeys will not save us. We need professional people. That's why me and Swami Vijnananandaji and my friend Jai Ahuja, who is my co-brother, I'm not co-brother, who's a co-founder in Nimittekam, my brother Jai Ahuja, all three of us have formed the Dharmansh Foundation. And I request every Hindu here to give 100 rupees a month or $10 a month to Dharmansh Foundation. We'll soon be launching the American Foundation also. It's going to be a 501c company. But right now, Dharmansh Foundation India is functional. Within a week or 10 days, we'll be up with our website. We need something like 10 to 20 crore rupees fund every month to run dedicated war rooms. Why should Arti Agarwal be doing all the documentation from her own pocket and her whole resources and her own, connections and whatever? Poor girl, she's gone dry doing this. I've been seeing her for last 10 years on the Facebook, and my heart used to reach out to her. I said, what is this girl doing here? I mean, in this world of hyenas, she's trying to do such a brilliant job with documenting Hindu deaths and Hindu genocide. So
thank
Arti
you,
should be
Omendra.
given. No, this is something I've never told you, but my heart always reached out to you. I was always there for you whenever I could reconnect with you. So I want to give you 10 lakh rupees a month to do this, if things come to that. And I can give you that money only when Hindus give that kind of money to Dharmansh Foundation. We have to learn from our enemies here. They give their collective money. And mind you, this is a very, very developed economic sense they have in the sense. See, we are children of so-called, Arthashastri, Chanakya and all that. We don't understand the value of collective money. There is no central Hindu core funding, we go out and we collect money for somebody having cancer or the child needed education, and then we have Milap and go this and that. I don't even know the name, change.org. What we need is a sustained funding, central core funding of Hindus, for the Hindus, by the Hindus, where we have dedicated people working for Dharmantaran. They fight conversions, they focus on Ghar Wapsi, they fight the issues of Pakistani Hindus, they fight the issues of Bangladeshi Hindus, they fight the issues of Sri Lankan Hindus, they fight the Hindus of Nepalese Hindus. The point I'm trying to make is that this cannot be an ad hoc arrangement anymore. We are up against a very well-oiled, well-funded mafia, which is shamelessly going on, killing, raping our people. The time has come for us to join hands. The only thing that needs, the only missing link, the Kshatriyas of Hindus are itching for action. When I say action, I mean it in every connotation of the word. I don't shy away from that. You touch my daughter, I'm going to behead you. That's it. And let anybody hear that. That's simple justice. Don't touch my daughter and I will not touch you. So Hindus are itching for action. We Hindus need to have, the missing link is the funding. Let's not be defensive anymore. We have already died so many times. 8 crore Hindus have been already butchered. 3 Hindu girls are picked every single day in Pakistan. What are we waiting for? I mean, what is going to shake us out of our slumber? So I with folded hands, I beg for dharmansh from fellow Hindus. That's the only thing that's going to save us. And that's the only thing that will win this civilizational battle on our side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Omiji, for that very inspiring note. And as you mentioned that, the other side is a very well-oiled machinery. And the sad part is that many of these so-called South Asian studies departments in many of these Ivy League universities, they are actually getting funded by Hindus, or at least people with Hindu names. I won't call them Hindus, but many Indians are going and sponsoring them. Their departments are named after these Hindus. So it is extremely, sad, and it is, of course, very galling to see that we are getting butchered by our own people. So I want to also talk about this genocide denial here, that, there is a very active campaign for genocide denial. It's not just a question of not doing anything. Of course, they're not doing anything, but, just like how we are trying to make a consistent effort to inform and educate people about the genocide of Hindus, the other side is making a very systematic effort to actually deny the genocide of Hindus, and they are putting in all sorts of resources into that genocide denial and revisionism. So, for example, this is of course the historic part, but such incidents can be found all over the place. That there is a book by Audrey Trishke on Aurangzeb, where she has painted him as a very nice, very cute leader who did not destroy more than 12 Hindu temples. Aurangzeb destroyed more than 100 temples in a day. He went to one town, whichever town he liked, and he just wiped out all the temples in that entire town. And this is documented by his own courtier. So there is a systematic effort at genocide denial. And, the DGH conference and many other conferences, this is only one example of such a conference. These conferences keep happening all the time. They actually try to ingrain it into people that, there's nothing wrong. This is, you need to tone down. You should not be extremist. So we need to make a consistent effort to actually talk about the genocide of Hindus and make sure that people realize that this is not some fiction, this is not some sort of a fantasy thing. It is a very, very real phenomenon. Yes, Dr. Benkin was, I think, wanting to say something.
Yeah, no, I just want to know, you're absolutely right, RTG. You are absolutely correct. And I just want to mention one way this happens. Here in the United States, we're fighting a very strong battle. The Bangladeshi government and the people that you've talked about, RTG, they continue to call it the Bangladeshi genocide of 1971.
Right.
However, I've been leading the charge along with the Hindu American Foundation and some others. Every time we say it, and I say this when I talk to senators on our Foreign Relations Committee or to the State Department. Every single time I say this, and again, it's not just me, every time we say it, we don't say the Bangladeshi genocide. We say the Bangladeshi Hindu genocide.
Yes.
And it's very important. We believe it's very important just to keep ingraining that, drilling that into people's head, because they're getting propaganda from the other side. We're basically saying, no, this is just against Bengalis. It's not against Hindus specifically, but we know better. The facts tell us better. The point is, I would really urge people, whenever you talk about 1971, always refer to it as the Bangladeshi Hindu genocide or just the Hindu genocide. I compare it to the Holocaust. There were a lot of people who were killed in the Holocaust, and they all suffered terribly. The Holocaust was, more than anything else, an anti-Jewish genocide. And that's why the attention to the Jewish victims, same thing with the Bangladeshi Hindu genocide. A lot of people were killed during Operation Searchlight, but it was primarily an anti-Hindu genocide.
Yes. I think we also have Shakella. Has Shakella joined in? Shakella on the panel? We were just waiting for Shakella to join in. I'm not sure if she's there.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Shakella.
Hi, how are you doing?
We can hear you. Thank you so much for joining us. And, we just wanted to take a quick perspective from you on the human rights of Hindus and Sikhs in Afghanistan. And, what have been your experiences with struggling with basic human rights in Afghanistan in general, especially against the Taliban ideology, the Sharia law, which they're imposing now?
Well, I grew up in this. I left Afghanistan in the 70s when this all started, but I have friends and relatives, and I revisited after the Taliban the first time. And a lot of my family is very politically involved. I never really took part in that because I always want to see the humanitarian and everything. And I think sometimes in politics we get lost between different objectives. So my was always the side with women and minority groups. I'm a Pashtun. Both of my parents are Pashtun. And right now, these groups of Taliban militants consider themselves Pashtun, which is not the way that we grew up. And they do not represent Islam. These are militant groups that terrorize the world for fear. I just saw a few clips throughout the last week. I have a lot of friends that are journalists that are stuck in hiding in different parts of Afghanistan. I have a lot of women that are hiding and in fear. I have friends that have daughters that are in fear. Government workers, officials, a judge that's a friend of mine. And she said they just let go of all these prisoners that I sentenced to death. Even if the Taliban don't get me, they will get me. So there is a lot of issues going on. However, the main issue is women's rights in music, in media. It's always close to my heart with the minority groups. The Hindus and the Sikhs, what's going to happen to them? They told them that, oh, we will allow you to practice. Why would you even say that? Because those are the citizens of Afghanistan. They're a minority group, but they are the citizens of Afghanistan. They have the right to everything else. However, these are militant Pakistani groups that everybody knows this. This is a fact that they've been training in these camps. And when they entered Afghanistan, you saw the video, the whole world saw the video where these people haven't seen, they sat in a child's park, for God's sakes, and rode on children because they haven't seen that. In a way, you kind of feel sad because these were children taken from their parents and trained. They never really had human connection. When I went back after 9/11, I, by myself, without my family's consent, which is a huge thing back then, because you're a woman, you can't just go by yourself. You got to have escorted by a man. And I asked them to take me to a place where the Taliban were. And this little kid told me, why did you want to go there? It's very dangerous. I said, I'll blend in. I blend in very quick because I speak many languages and I'll wear whatever they want me to wear. And I've been a photographer all these years. So he took me to this camp and quickly these men approached me, very scary men. What are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm your sister. I'm here to, give you help medically or whatever you need, because I was working with several different organizations. And all of a sudden he went into the store. They even posed for me. This was very, very sad, very poor people. But the humanity in some of their eyes wasn't there. They are trained to not think anybody that disagrees with them is not human. They have the right to kill them. They want to go thousands of years to a cultural belief rather than a religious. And they're being taught this by government that are funding these things to benefit them for whatever reason they have. But when it comes, it's a human rights disaster for the minority groups. They're not part of this agenda. It's a disaster for women's rights groups. They don't have an agenda, but half of your population are women. And now you're telling them to wear burqas, not only that, but wear a niqab, which means this much of your eyes can show. If you are in any country, how can you identify between a man and a woman when you can only see this? Think about the security issue. Think about the future of women. Where are the women's rights groups? All of these minority groups are going to suffer. Right now, it's almost like we're joining them. Globally, we're joining them. We're saying it's okay to behave this way. It is not okay. The leadership around the world needs to stand up, not just for women's rights, but for minority rights, for humans' rights. This is all a disaster. And when they cover it, like you said, in Bangladesh, they're not saying Indian. They took that out of it. So then people can say, oh, it's a fight between each other. Oh, it's okay. In that part of the world, they're doing this anyway. That's not true.
Yeah.
That's not true. Our communities, I am realizing this in the last few weeks. I became very popular because I took a fight up with the Taliban because I'm a woman, and I think this is wrong. I think education should be number one for globally for every woman. Globally, we outnumber men. Why? And we have representation. We have strong leadership all over the planet. We should not accept this. No matter where on the planet there is a woman, she should not be told that she cannot have education, she cannot have rights, and she cannot just have any kind of support, because they're shutting that down on us. They're saying, the other day they said no music. Who does that? No music. That means you're going to erase art, you're going to erase history because you want to create your own world. This is very dangerous. And they have a nuclear arsenal. When they go back to Pakistan, they have already strategically placed people in that part, of that parliament. This is going to be very, very scary. The leadership around the world need to wake up. Their direct enemy is India. We know this. Since 1947, they've been wanting that back. And if it wasn't for them, the Asian community right there around their neighbors would have been just as successfully as Europe. Think about that. Technologically, they would have been up there, but every time with Pakistan, destabilizing their economy, what they did in Bangladesh with those ladies gang raping them by their military, they wanted to destabilize and create single parenting. We know this. We are right now, like you said earlier, something I really liked. Right now, the world is too educated. We have come too far. Social media has come too far. We could send this message globally. The only way we can shut down Pakistan in these camps is boycott them, stop their money. Sanction them with government, but stop their money. When every citizen of Pakistan should be boycotted. If you are right there and you are benefiting and supporting this regime, then we need to boycott you. If I stop your funding, and unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of groups that are going to suffer. We're all suffering globally. We just hit a pandemic and we're wearing masks. If China, Iran, and these countries get together, what is going to happen to India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh? Afghanistan has already become the hub for terrorism. Every Arabic terrorist group is sending them money. So you've got every psychotic, crazy person that is a different militant group that's been waiting for this period is sending them, funding them. And if we minority groups here in the United States and around the world get together and form an organization, we can stop this. And if you tell everyone globally, especially women's rights groups, Indian Americans, people that are minority, to stop purchasing Pakistani goods and stop selling to them, I guarantee you when it hits them in their pocket, they're going to understand. You can't fight people with guns. We're not those kind of fighters. Those are cowards that do that. People like us, we're people of the pen. We're educated people, for God's sake. This is what we want to give the future to our children, to the women. I would like to hand that to the women of this planet. I've been threatened so many times, it doesn't faze me anymore. So one of my relatives messaged me and she said, they're going to kill you. I said, I don't know a single person that has left this planet alive. But the difference between people is how far we go for what we believe in. And I believe in women's rights. I believe in minority rights. I've been a minority. I've been a refugee. I've had no food at night, where I slept with a little piece of bread and a little piece of chai. Okay. I've been on the other side too now, because I came here, and you know what, when I lived in Pakistan as a refugee, I had to go and take all of my siblings on the street till it got dark, because we didn't have any entertainment. We didn't have a TV. And the one thing I was always jealous about, I would see these little girls with backpack and uniform go to school, and I couldn't go. So education is very important.
I have a very important question for you. Some people are asking it. Thank you for letting, Afghanistan is in everybody's hearts right now. People are talking about it everywhere, and, worried about the women who are standing up to the Taliban and who are actually getting whipped. Actually, these are like medieval practices of, torturing people and, punishing them. And so there are a couple of things that, our groups were discussing, women's rights groups that I work with, and they were saying that actually women in Afghanistan do not mind the Sharia law, and these kind of whippings are part of the, protocol and, in the dictum. So I just wanted to know, what do you think about that? Because I was shocked when I heard that.
That's a good question, because the world likes to believe that. In 1978, when the Ayatollah Khomeini took over Iran, some of the most educated women in Iran were with him because he wanted to bring religion back. He wanted to bring security back. He wanted to bring the economy back up so they could actually live the lifestyle next to the Western world, comfortably, because the Shah had taken them economically pretty down. Well, they all agreed with them until about a year or so into it, where he destroyed all of art, all of theater, their historical sites, and all of a sudden told them that they need to wear not only a burqa, but it's a type of burqa that you can only see their faces. And within months, they were being assassinated. Anybody that spoke against them were assassinated. All government officials, the higher ranking ones, were called into a meeting. They were assassinated. Their wives were forced to stay, but somehow some of them found escapes. I live in LA, that's where I grew up. Ali Shah Reza and his family, that's where they resided. His sister died.
I have a follow-up question. I just want to make sure,
Sure.
because we are sort of running out of time, but I want to sort of ask you, like, there are just women fighting these Taliban on the streets. Are their husbands not supporting them? Like, why is it just these women, standing in the middle of the streets? Because I saw that and I was shocked, and the Taliban says that, oh, women are, there to just for reproduction, and that's all they're there for. So they're machines for
I saw that.
Taliban,
and that's such a clever thing to say.
Right. So yeah, I just want to know, why are the men who are not supporting these women, or are they just scared?
One thing, fear is of course the big thing, because you've got people with tanks and armed weapons in your face, but you have to be, we talk about brave, but brave is not me speaking and getting death threats. Brave is standing against a weapon and still speaking your mind, asking for your right. So when people say they're okay with it, that is wrong, because I could show you films and documents when they're standing against a gun. And where their husbands are, some of them, I don't know if they're married, because some of these girls are very young, some of them are very old. Do you know, in my own family, there are hundreds of women that their husband died and they decided to stay a widow. So Afghanistan is full of a lot of widows, a lot of young girls who want education, girls that are not married yet. Those are the girls you see screaming, because that's the future of the country. And they don't want to go to the dark ages. They don't want to do that. And they are going not only against culture, not only against religion, not only against guns, but against their parents, because their mother and parents are from an older generation. You know that as an Indian American, your older generation will always tell you, don't get a divorce. Oh no, no matter what your husband does, that's your husband, that's your religion, that's your faith, stay in it. That older generation does the same thing, telling their daughters, you cannot protest. If you go protest, you're not my daughter, but she's going out there anyway. She's taking all of that on her to still protest. So the world, people like us, have to stand behind her, no matter what.
Thank you, Shakella. I think I'm going to take a minute of closing comments from Dr. Benkin and Omendra ji, and then also Arti ji, you wanted to mention about the this is the anniversary of 3 big genocides that happened in the Hindu world. I don't know if you mentioned that early on, but maybe
no, I didn't get a chance to mention it yet. So
yes, so shall we start with Dr. Omi, so he can just sort of wind up, and then we can go to Omi ji, please go ahead, and then we'll end with that note, Arti ji. Oh
yeah, thank you, Richard. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for considering. My daughter has her exams, I have to be with her. So I'll end up with the question that Arti had asked, that why does the world ignore this genocide? I have run out of ideas. Stockholm syndrome and dimitude and the joy of looking good to others. They don't add up. They don't add up. I have an acronym I would like to share with all the wise people listening to me. Please take down your pen and note this down. That's the kind of the lethal weapon of jihad. RULLS, we call it rules: random, unceasing, low-level, scattered violence. A stark violence, something like 9/11, doesn't need any advertisement. It's going to shake anybody's sensibilities. Anybody's going to weep seeing those 3,000 innocent human beings being incinerated to death. That's something which doesn't need any media attention. What escapes attention, what stays under the radar, is a violence of a very specific type, of course, very organized, which shows the lethal nature of the enemy and the degree of organization, random because it cannot be predicted. There is no pattern. You can be stabbed because his wife did not cook a good meal that day. He could have a grudge about Afghanistan. He could have a grudge about Nigeria, about Somalia. God knows. He could have a grudge that I'm not the right kind of, subsect follower. So that's random. You cannot predict when and who will be stabbed. Unceasing. At least Hindus must know this, that the first Islamic attack upon Bharat in the 8th century by Muhammad bin Qasim on Raja Dahir. It's been 1400 years. And we have been relentlessly attacked by them. Gotta give them. They don't yield. They don't relent. They don't give up. The most dangerous aspect of this, the low level. Keep the violence level enough that the kafirs keep cowering in a corner. Never raise the level of a violence where they get united and evoke a response. This happened though in Gujarat. Kafirs responded. So we are like a huge elephant. Hinduism is like a huge elephant which is being drugged, and ants are nibbling at us constantly. So maybe within a few months, that elephant is going to be nibbled away to death. And the last part of that is scattered. Someday it's going to happen in San Bernardino, someday in Chicago, someday in Jaipur, someday in Delhi, Kozhikode. There is no geographical locale safe from these people. So keep this in mind: random, unceasing, low-level, scattered violence. It's the most lethal weapon because it escapes detection. It's like a slow-growing cancer. A B-grade leader is killed somewhere, a C-grade leader is eliminated, 3 girls are picked. So the incessant jihad is going on, but the sensibilities of people, who are there every month installments to meet, somebody has a daughter's marriage, somebody's son has to go to college, somebody has to pay his mortgages. We just don't have time for all this. So this kind of violence does not evoke the sensitivities and the sensibilities of the Hindu leadership. We have to educate the whole world, the Western world. They are our allies. I've been constantly saying that the Christian Jewish community are our biggest allies. Let us reach out to them. They are humane people. They have accommodated so many Hindus in their country. They're open-minded guys. Our threat is common. Tell them about random, unceasing, low-level, scattered violence, because they also are a victim of the same kind of violence. And this goes undetected. The world doesn't wake up to this. If we are sensitive enough and sensible enough to notice this.
I think I want to segue. Yeah, please end. And then I want to segue on the Bangladesh and the Bengal.
Yes, I'm ending. Then we will be sensitive and sensible to do something about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I gotta go.
Thank you for that comment.
Namaste Arti, Namaste Benkin ji, Namaste Richard ji.
Yes.
Namaste Omendra.
Namaste Benkin ji.
Namaste.
So I just want to mention the the violence in Bengal that just happened post elections and post, it was called Khela Hobe by most people because, that was their slogan. But then at the end of it, they eliminated a lot of the cadre of the BJP, once the Mamata Banerjee government won. And this has not been reported in the media. So inside India itself, Shakella just pointed out about how women were not safe. It doesn't matter what religion, but here political, again, it was a political issue. So that I think these are very important issues to note, that, when people can become so radical that they can just eliminate a political cadre in a democratic institution or a democratic country, then obviously there is a failing of the system. And someone, Dinesh Ji, who also works with me in various things, is also mentioning that the political system fails. This happened in West Bengal and East Bengal, Bangladesh. It happened when Khalida Zia won. When Khalida Zia won, all of our Hindu cadre and the people, they were killed, the temples were destroyed. And, basically the pattern in East Bengal or West Bengal, they're the same. Someone just told me that on a panel I was discussing, and I was shocked. So it is a very, very dangerous thing. And what Omiji just mentioned, rules, RULLS, is the factor that comes into play here. But Dr. Benkin, I think I will take your words as well on this topic.
Okay, but first of all, I have seen the persecution in West Bengal, in what I call Mamatastan, and it is real. And what's happening in East Bengal is leaking to West Bengal. But I want to take a moment, Shakella. Manana, I work very closely with Pashtuns, expatriate Pashtuns in Europe and near Washington here, as well as Pashtuns in the homeland. So I greatly honor you and your people. I know this about Hindus and Hinduism. So I also want to say something about Pashtuns and Pashtunwali. So thank you so much. With regard to this, I really think that, I think one of the problems is that we are so scattered, and we do have quite a mountain to climb. That's a mountain of crap. I mean, again, Shakella, I want to go back to what you said. I really, the fact that the Western feminist groups are not outraged by all this, that has to absolutely say to me that they really don't care about women. So what I want to say is, so what I've done here in Bangladesh, and again, COVID means I haven't been there since last February, but what I've done is you got to look for the pressure points. Again, I think something that Shakella said about about cutting the money supply. Pakistan's a little more complex, but not impossible. Bangladesh is as simple as you can be if you're an American or even another. What drives the Bangladeshi economy are garment exports. Who's their biggest customer? United States. Second biggest customer is another Western democracy, Germany. I know for a fact, because of some things I've been involved in, when the Bangladeshis really believe that you're serious and you're going to do something about that, they'll fold like a cheap suit. And when I say that, what I mean is they will do the right thing if it's contrary to their interest to keep doing the wrong thing. But you've got to really ratchet that up. By the way, another thing that drives our economy, and it also drives Pakistan's, UN peacekeeping missions. And guess who's the largest funder of peacekeeping missions? U.S. taxpayers. So there's a lot we can do. Now I'll give one quick example of something I'm doing right now, to give you an idea of how you have to work sometimes on little victories. President Biden has given the Senate Foreign Relations Committee his new nominee to be ambassador to Bangladesh. His name is Peter D. Haas. Seems like a very well-qualified individual who would make a good ambassador. But I have one concern. He has a history of making trade deals, and I know that a trade deal with the U.S. has been the Bangladeshis' holy grail for at least this entire century. I know ambassadors that they sent to the U.S. specifically to get that, and we stopped that. If we make a trade deal, just to get a trade deal done, kind of like the deal with Iran, doesn't matter if it's a bad deal, they just wanted to do a deal. If we make a trade deal with Bangladesh and don't raise this issue and say, look, we don't want words, we want actions on X, Y, Z, or what, if we don't do that, we are losing a huge opportunity, and we're giving away the card, the biggest card we have. So I'm actually working with people right now to make sure questions about the Bangladeshi Hindus are raised during Mr. Haas's confirmation hearings. Still got a ways to go, but in other words, so that's kind of how you get it.
That's a very
again,
good point, Dr. Benkin, because this is the 50th year and the ethnic cleansing, the book that you have written needs to get recognition as an official genocide, right? An ethnic cleansing that really happened, right?
And absolutely. And the fact that the Bangladeshi government, and it doesn't matter if it's the Awami League or the BNP, two sides of the same coin, they're continuing it. They're keeping it going. And that's the thing. And if we
That's
can...
because there's a parallel governing process going on in the religious, sector, right? Isn't that what's going on there? So, but I do want to, thank you so much, Dr. Benkin. I know you have to come back to speak about our friendship, Hindu-Jewish friendship. So we really look forward to talking to you about that. But I want to take the last comments from Arti ji, because I know we talked about that. And, I was just shocked. We have like a 100-year anniversary and a 75-year anniversary of one genocide and a 50-year. So please go ahead.
So the remarkable thing about the year 2021 is that it is the 100th year anniversary of the Mopla Hindu genocide.
Yeah.
It's the 75th year anniversary of the Noakhali genocide of Western, it used to be a part of East Pakistan or Bangladesh, whatever you want to call it. But at that time, it was a part of India before the partition of India. And it is the 50th year anniversary of the Bangladeshi Hindu genocide. So there are three extremely, important episodes of history, of Hindu history, of the history of the Indian subcontinent in the same year. And so this is something I always find very remarkable, that we've gone through so many genocides and there have been so many victims of these genocides. And the impact of these genocides is not limited to just that one person or just that one family. It's a transgenerational thing. The trajectory of that entire family gets changed when they are forced to become refugees, when some woman gets raped, or when you are basically just somebody in your family gets slaughtered or your house is burnt. The impact of that is for so many future generations. So in the year 2021, it is an extremely important year to take stock of the impact of these three major events that happened in the Indian subcontinent, all targeting Hindus, but there is no conversation around it. I think, Richaji, you and I are the only people who even observe that 2021 is the year of the anniversary of, three major Hindu genocides. So that is the extent of the lack of conversation around it. The media has not carried out the responsibility in talking about this. So the biggest question here, at least from the perspective of media, and media, I don't mean just mainstream media, I mean the academia, the mainstream media, the movies, everything we are absorbing in the form of media. Why is there so much silence on the history of Hindu genocides? And I think the US Congress, the UN, human rights, Amnesty, all these organizations need to officially at least recognize these genocides and acknowledge the impact of those genocides. And we need research in this. We need serious researchers who can actually document the testimony of the people who suffered in these genocides and the impact faced for the future generations. Because like I said, the impact is not limited to just that one person. Their children, their grandchildren, they're all impacted by it.
So, and we are going to have one more session later about that. This is a transgenerational impact of an incident like that. You may have had that 100 years ago, a Mopla genocide, but the impact of that is even now, as you can see, we are always talking about why Kerala can actually be the next Kashmir, because Kashmir has faced that, refugees in their own country phenomenon. And many West Bengal, I just mentioned, also had that. So I think this sort of brings a rounded understanding of how in the South Asian region, this whole, the driving factor of how Hindus are actually a subaltern, aspect of, even though they try to portray Hindus and, the whole, phenomenon that is going on around right now, Hindu phobia. That really, it really begs some more discourse as to how did we ever land here? You know, when actually, yeah, we've been like persecuted minorities in many places. So I think, thank you, Arti, for giving me that break and handling this panel. It's a very intense topic, and I think we really got a very good perspective, you know.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for having me on. It was really important discussion with some really great people. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I know you always wanted to talk to Dr. Benkin, so we'll have another session with him too, after reading his book. And yeah,
sure.
So I'm sure Dr. Benkin is going to come back right now to, you know, in a bit, we're just going to give him a little break. And then he'll talk about the Hindu-Jewish friendship. So we are just going to talk about, you know, what can we learn? Because, you know, the Jewish communities have and us have had a very long friendship. But I know I'll let you go because I know is it past midnight now for you?
It's 12:45.
Yes.
1:45.
That's
the
when
way
our
of the
day
intellectual
begins.
Kshatriyas in India. So thank you so much. I'll drop off very soon.
Have a good
And
night.
it was lovely to be here. Namaste to all the viewers and to the panelists. Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste, Arti. So we'll have a short break, and then Dr. Benkin will come on board.